Welcome back to Green Disruptors, where we spotlight the bold innovators rewriting the rules of sustainability. Today's guest is Ross Orr, President and CEO of Bactech Environmental, a pioneering company using bioleaching to clean up toxic mining waste and extract valuable metals in the process. Think bugs eating rocks to solve one of the dirtiest problems in mining. In this episode, Ross shares how Bactech is transforming tailings into treasure, stabilizing toxic arsenic, and partnering with communities in Ecuador and beyond to create a new gold standard, literally and figuratively, for sustainable mining. So glad to have you here today. How's your day going?
Good to be here. Yeah, so far so good.
You look like you're in like a sunny, is that just like a nice background or are you actually outside?
No, I'm actually inside, but I am in Florida, so it is sunny.
Same difference. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to Bactech.
Out of the securities industry originally, back in the early 80s. With a couple of friends, we started a group called CC Capital Partners and started financing, biotechnology, oil and gas, mining, and one company in particular was this little company called Bactech that was living in Perth, Australia at the time. This is back in the early 90s, I guess. I brought Bactech to Canada, took them public, raised some initial capital, and then we've been trying to find the correct, the round peg to put in the round hole, which is Ecuador for us. Took a while to get there, but we're progressing on that, and then of course we've also got the exciting patent that we filed recently as well. Excuse me.
So give us the bird's eye view of what it is you actually do and what kind of projects you get involved in.
Our bugs eat rocks is our standard. What do you call that? I hope you can edit this.
Elevator pitch? I don't know.
Well, it'd be nice if it was an elevator pitch because then that infers a very short description of what we do. Unfortunately, we don't have that. We have to really sort of grab people's attention. And our bugs eat rocks. Recently at the PDAC, the Prospectors Conference in Toronto, that's all we have in our booth is just that. It just says our bugs eat rocks, and it's incredible how many people stop and back up and say, "Okay, what does that mean?"
That's a good headline.
And in essence, what we're doing is it's called bioleaching or biooxidation. And over the course of 6 days, bacteria in stirred tanks, big stainless tanks, literally break down the sulfide mineralization into its basic elements and releases metal for recovery. The old days they used to burn it, smelting, roasting, etc. To build a roaster or a smelter is major money. To build a bioleach plant is significantly less. But I think we're the only technology out there that actually stabilizes arsenic as a byproduct. So we tend to go looking for what is called arsenopyrite, which is an arsenic sulfide mineral that usually contains gold. And so that led us to southwestern Ecuador, where we found an area that produces horrific amounts of arsenic along with gold.
So you're solving, when you say you're finding the round hole for the round peg, like what problems are you solving? Like obviously arsenic, you need to find a safe way to get rid of it, but you're also adding value in this process and making something that was waste into something that's usable, right?
That's the future. The present, the technology that we've used on 3 plants previously, literally separate, it oxidizes the sulfides, releases the gold and silver for conventional recovery, and then in that liquid that the bugs live in, they will then put things like arsenic, copper, nickel, cobalt, zinc into solution because they react to acid. Gold and silver do not. What you're referring to with the other is the patent that we filed recently where the iron and the sulfides that used to go out to the tailings are now, as a liability, are now going to count as an actual a revenue center, a profit center for the company. And it's through the bioleach work of our guys and Merarco, which is a nonprofit associated with Laurentian University in Sudbury, Canada. We've come up with this special formula to produce magnetite, which goes right into the steel industry. and some sort of an organic fertilizer with the sulfur that we generate. So again, you've taken a 100-year liability and you've turned it into something that's actually going to add to your bottom line for your deposit. And there are a lot of marginal nickel, copper, cobalt projects out there that won't get financed because they're just too close to that line of break even, and nobody wants to lend the money to build, a $300 million mine. Well, now you've just said, okay, let's take these two products, let's throw them into the equation. Now I've got a good project. And so
it's a better investment for people coming in trying to get these projects.
Well, it's a better investment, but at the same time, if you're a mining company and you can actually say to the local governments you're dealing with for your permits, hey, we're not going to have a tailings pond because we're going to use everything. They'll probably say you're lying, but
yeah, probably.
Now, keeping in mind that this technology is like most starts in a lab and has to be scaled up, and that's where things can go off the rails as far as new technologies go. Our rebuttal to that would be that bioleaching is our bailiwick, and everything else that we do already exists. So we're just sort of connecting the cabooses together, or the train cars, into a flow sheet that shouldn't have a problem working at scale. Shouldn't.
Okay, so you say you found a sweet spot, and you said Ecuador, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's just because that area has so much of this mineral, and they're producing an extra amount. Like, are there other projects besides there that you're going to be going after? Like, are you waiting for the patent to
we've
move
had
forward?
outreach from a number of different governments. I'm actually going to visit one later this month. I won't say where, but hopefully I'll be able to talk about it in June. There's areas of the world that are like a moonscape. I mean, the Tailings, and Sudbury is a perfect example. I mean, you've probably got 100 million tons of tailings that are sitting there, and that's just the purotite, the stuff, the tricky stuff that we worked on. In the case of Ecuador, it's interesting because if you have a gold mine in Canada or in the United States, and you're a company and it's your deposit, and I came to you and said, I'm going to pay you 70 cents on the dollar to buy your material, you'd tell me the door's that way. Go. In Ecuador, because the mines tend to be small, independently owned family businesses, chasing places in the world to find a home where you can sell your arsenic gold concentrates is pretty limited. And about 3 or 4 years ago, the Chinese government put a tax on importing high arsenic gold concentrates. They don't try to solve the problem, they just want to make money off it. So they put this, I think it was about a 15% tax on it, which literally the buyers passed on to the miners and dropped the prices they paid for this high arsenic material to 45 to 50 cents on the dollar. They used to get 70 cents prior to the tax. We're going to return them to that same level where they were happy. And if you do the math, it's about a 40% increase over what they're getting now. So we can see ourselves controlling that whole market because of what we pay and how we expect to pay, and treating these people with respect. The biggest complaint we hear about dealing with Asian buyers is the lack of respect, the lack of payment. Well, this is wrong, that's wrong. We just want to make it easy for them. Ecuador is a particularly interesting country because it has a fairly large indigenous population that is not crazy about mining, and realistically, why would you be? I mean, it's the mess that we've left behind over the years is substantial. We spent a lot of time in the local community where we're building this plant, and I'm happy to say got 100% support for the project, because how do you argue with somebody who's trying to do something positive?
Yeah.
You can say that in mining you're trying to do something positive to produce metals for batteries and the whatnot, but you still have to do it delicately, cleanly. There's a cleanly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we're there. And I think this is the first domino of many dominoes in behind. I jokingly used to say that somebody super glued the first one. We just keep hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, and it's starting to wobble, but it hasn't fallen over quite yet. But
Yeah.
when it does, I think we're going to be extremely busy.
So I'm curious about these conversations within these communities, like obviously getting rid of something that's toxic and that's, you're not able to extract whatever precious metal. Like I can see the mining value to that, but is there anything beyond that that would influence the community?
Yeah, probably getting paid 10 times what they're getting now.
So this is an economic decision a lot of the times for these people.
Oh, I think I think foremost they are concerned more about their background, the environment. They
Nice.
accept a lot of water that comes from Ponce Enriquez, which is really where all the mining takes place. So they're being polluted by the mines upstream. So anything that can be done to stop that, because we don't discharge any water into the rivers or anything. It's just all recycled in the process. Secondly, the fact that the people in the area really don't have a lot of employment. They tend to be pickers for, cocoa, bananas, big bananas in that area. Our actual 100-acre plot of land it's full of cocoa trees. And one of the things that we did when we bought the property was told the guys that were working there to stay. I don't need 100 acres of dead cocoa trees. So if you want to pick the pods, which contain the cocoa seeds, and sell them, go for it. I mean, to me, I've got 10 guys on the property now who are almost unpaid by me security people. They wouldn't mess with people that are coming onto the property. So, it's a good back and forth that we have with them right now. So far, we haven't built it yet, but we'll see where that goes.
That's good. I mean, it seems like you've tapped into like those people. Especially those indigenous populations, like that's their ancestral land. So it makes sense that they would care mostly about the climate impact. But if it's a win-win for everyone, there's just no reason to not go forward.
Well,
and then
no,
you have that as a case study for future communities and projects. So
yeah, and it's interesting too because part of the whole ESG concept is the social side, and we are cognizant of the fact that you are going to be dropping a lot of money into someone's lap who's not used to having that much money paid. And so there is I think a financial literacy aspect to what we're doing as well that
interesting. Yeah.
we need to be able to say, look, you don't need that brand new Ford 150 on your first paycheck. Let's think about, do you want to own a house? Do you want your kids to go to school, at university, that sort of thing. So I think we'll probably set them up with maybe we'll find a financial planner or somebody in Quito who could sort of feather his own nest through the whole process as well, but also teach financial literacy. So.
That's very cool. So what's kind of the next phase? Like, I mean, are you going to solely focus on this Ecuador project? I mean, you said you were already talking, but what does scaling look like for this business?
Well, so the Ecuador project is two phases. The first phase, and I wish we would have started at 100 tons a day as opposed to 50, only because it's easier to raise 40 million than 20 million. I mean, that's crazy, but that's...
I've heard that over and over, isn't that
Yeah, no,
interesting?
nobody wants anything small. I spoke to one mining fund who said, can you get your project up to 200 million? We'd love to do your... I said, I can't. I mean, I don't need that much money.
Yeah.
The two phases together might be $80 million. And the second phase will start once production starts in the first phase. And fortunately for us, the technology is modular, so we don't have to interrupt our cash flow to add more tanks to make the project literally 4 times bigger than the initial phase. So we've got those two. We're very interested in Peru. Northern Peru has a lot of what they call And there's always two ways to say things in mining, energite or energite. And that is effectively, I like to say it's an arsenopyrite with copper mixed in with it as well. And so what we would do there is we would precipitate out the copper and use that as a byproduct for sale as well. The city of Trujillo in northern Peru is a port where most of those concentrates go to. So the miners bring material to Trujillo to the processors. They sell their rock to them. The processors crush, grind, and float it, and they sell to the Chinese. Well, we hope to step in there and put a local plant and stop 50% of the value going somewhere else. Keep it in country.
So how? Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, how are you able to, are you working mostly with governments in the starting phases of these relationships, or how are you getting in the door?
Well, without saying too much, where I'm going in a couple of weeks is a country that approached us because they have a lot of legacy tailings left over. And of course, the problem with tailings, once the owner goes bankrupt, well, guess who owns it? The public. It's just the way it is. One of my biggest frustrations in life is a project that's right here in Canada, and it's up in the Yellowknife, and it's called the Giant Mine, and they produced arsenopyrite for many years. There's about 16 million tons of tailings that contain 900,000 ounces of gold and arsenic, obviously. They have taken down the mill, which was full of arsenic and asbestos and everything else. They've got 250,000 tons of arsenic trioxide, which is after burning. It's the ash that's left over that they don't know what to do with. I mean, we're the answer, right? When we first started looking at the project 10 years ago, the cleanup was estimated to be $1 billion. It's now $4.5 billion. And unfortunately, the locals say, we kind of like the idea of spending $4.5 billion in our backyard. It's tragic because the gold values alone are worth $3 billion, that you could apply to the remediation. But these things, the bigger they get, the more political they get. And
so they're not even open to considering you guys as a solution because it's like the train's already run away, or what?
It's 10 years ago, I showed up there for something called Giant Mine Day. There was Bactech, and there were 49 engineering companies. And they looked at me as the evil guy, because I like to say we don't put Band-Aids on things. We actually finish the project and put it to bed. Engineering companies make money by monitoring water discharge and whatever else for 50 years. So it was pretty obvious that
so they want a 75-year contract that doesn't necessarily put it to bed, like you said.
It's a cash cow for them. They don't want an answer. And I find this with a lot of other groups too. As an example, the Sierra Club. I'm not saying them specifically, but that type of group that raises money to fight mining, they don't want answers, because if they get answers, then they have nothing to raise money off the back of. So you kind of get stuck in this crazy vortex.
Well, it's almost like they want to have something to fight about, because that's when they get the most publicity, funding, and attention. So
of course.
If the problem is solved and the fight is over, then they're like, oh. Yeah.
Well, imagine going to them pitching the fact that, how about a mine with no tailings? They're going to go, yeah, right. That's not going to happen. Well, we hope to make it happen.
So do you think there's maybe a thought leadership solution, even if it takes a long time? Is there something that would help the messaging that could maybe help people wake up to this?
I think building plants is your best approach. The mining industry is relatively small. When you think about the number of major companies and the market caps of all the mining companies are still a fraction. They may not even add up to Amazon, to tell you the truth. Once we do this, once we prove this technology 100% that it can be scaled up, which we'll have to do through a demonstration plant, I think that's when the rubber hits the road. People start to say, holy mackerel, I've got a gold mine, pardon the pun, sitting in my backyard. That I didn't realize I had. We're obviously a threat to the iron ore industry because why rip a kilometer-long hole in the ground, to mine something when
When you've
you've
already
got,
got tailings sitting
yeah,
there.
like Bingham Canyon down in your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I could ski, no.
Right. And now the copper mine has been just a fixture in my little community here forever and ever.
Yeah.
It gets bigger every year, and it's wild.
So, it's a very frustrating space right now, the mining industry, because you've got historic prices for gold, silver. I mean, $3,400 yesterday on the price of gold, and yet you can still buy a company like Barrick for literally half of what it was trading at when gold was $1,500. So there's something screwy going on in the
That is
marketplace.
screwy.
And I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what the answer is, to tell you the truth. There seems to be a lot of naked shorting going on in the market that works against you, especially if you're a small company.
Yeah.
And it's a bit predatory, to tell you the truth. But hopefully it'll pass.
I hope so. So, with where you're at right now, what would be like if you could solve one problem overnight? What would it be?
Oh, I think the patent is really the future. I mean, think about it. You've set the table. Somebody has set the table for you already. You're going back to eat, and all the new stuff that you've already started. Well, why wouldn't you bolt one of these plants onto an existing operation and treat the tailings right at the source and create
Yeah.
better value for what you're doing? I don't know. It's frustrating because I see it. I think
Yeah.
you see it,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't see it. And a lot of people are very shy about implementing new technologies in mining because the dollar costs are usually very high. And the guy who makes the decision is the guy who probably gets fired if it doesn't work. So, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said to me, well, go see Harry. If he builds one, then come back and see me, and maybe I'll do one then.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's like the more plants you have in operation and time, like it's easy to show the lack of risk. But in these first rounds, like you can tell them that, but you're not able to show it as much necessarily, and that is
Well,
getting an
I
early
mean,
adopter
I would
is
hope
hard.
the fact that we built 3 plants that all operated successfully. I mean, the one in Tasmania ran for 15 years, and eventually the mine just ran out of ore. Um, we have to go back and reinvent the wheel just because we want to do it for ourselves. I mean,
That
apparently we
is
do.
silly.
Now, as I think I mentioned to you before, there's 2 things working against us. One is Ecuador has gotten a little bit scary
Yeah.
with the narcos and whatnot, and of course that anybody who's thinking about investing that's going to be at the top of their list is
Yeah.
security. But the last time I looked, they're still building mines in the Congo, which I wouldn't go to.
I was gonna say I'd rather go to Ecuador than the Congo. Thanks.
Exactly. And secondly, the fact that if you add up our assets, it's nowhere near 20 million US in the event it doesn't work. And as one guy said to me, Ross, if you can't make the plant work, what am I going to do with it? I mean, and I said, I can't argue with that. So one of the things that we're trying to do is acquire probably tailings assets to add to our balance sheet. So I can point to something and say, this is cash flowing. That could
This
be
has added this much to our bottom line. Makes sense. Well, I mean, I'm like equally excited and now I'm frustrated along with you. But it is, I mean, it's an amazing solution to something like there's so many multiple problems that are being solved for people in ways that you're benefiting communities. So I hope people can hear this and understand the impact. But is there anything you'd like to end with here?
Anybody listening to this, reach out to me because I'd love to talk about it. I might ask you for money, but that's just part of the game.
Just be fair warned.
But yeah, no, we'd like to find a partner in Ecuador because we figure that's probably the easiest approach. Give the partner the lion's share of the money, of the cash flow until they're made whole, and then have them drop back to a minority position and get a free ride. for 20 years. I mean, that's what it boils down to, really.
Yeah.
And there has to be a family office out there that spills $20 million, that would be interested in not only making more money, but also getting behind a technology that's going to provide a lot of benefits down the road to anybody in a mining country.
Wish I was in that position, but hopefully things will line up for you.
Well, hopefully your show will be a huge success and you'll get that 20 million. And
This is going to be the one that goes viral. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure. Always fun.
A huge thank you to Ross Orr for joining us and sharing Bactech's mission to mine clearer, smarter, and more equitably. If you're interested by the idea of turning waste into wealth and doing right by people on the planet along the way, follow Bactech Environmental and check out their work at bactechgreen.com. And hey, if you happen to have $20 million to spare, Russ might want to talk to you. Be sure to subscribe to Green Disruptors for more stories from the front lines of climate tech and sustainable innovation. Remember, this podcast is brought to you by Mountaintop Social Marketing, a growth partner for companies in green tech that are ready to scale. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.